Thank you for joining us on another parent webinar. I think this is our fourth webinar. My name is Cécile Gregoriades. I'm the Director of Communications here at École Bilingue. And our topic today, our webinar, is how to face uncertain times with our children. Here is the description of the webinar. So as we all living in every day, the COVID-19 pandemic has created a lot of uncertainty in our lives. Some of us have lost their jobs, childcare is an issue, traveling is restricted, and of course now the nation is in turmoil because of these recent acts of racism. As we face the summer months, which are supposed to be all about taking a break from stress and anxiety and work, this situation actually creates a lot of stress and anxiety. How do we deal with these emotions, and how do we talk to our children about this? We have three wonderful panelists who are with us today and who are going to guide us and help us navigate those questions. Carla Maia, Douglas Gostlin, and Christopher Colburn. Let me introduce them really briefly. So Carla has 17 years of experience working as a lower school counselor and social and emotional learning specialist at international schools in the US, Portugal, and Brazil. Carla is currently the lower school counselor, and she works primarily with preschool and young elementary students. Carla is actually also the school's diversity leader. Douglas Gosselin has a dual license as a marriage, family, and child therapist, and he's also a licensed professional clinical counselor. He's currently a school counselor at École Bilingue and works primarily with older elementary students and middle school students. Christopher Colburn has been teaching social and emotional learning at EB for the last 5 years. He's received his training in SEL from mindful schools and in conflict resolution and restorative justice practices from SEEDS Community Resolution Center. His role is to help children better regulate their emotions, learn how to read emotions in others, build positive self-esteem, learn how to calm the mind and the body, and show empathy and compassion for others. We are together until 1:30 today, and there will be time for you participants to ask questions either during the presentation, just chat with us, or you can also wait until the end and chat or just unmute yourself and ask your questions. We've led a lot of times for questions. So, all right, Douglas, you can take it away.
Great. Thank you, Cécile, for the introductions and for providing this forum for us to present to the EB families. And welcome also to the EB families. I see some familiar faces or familiar names, and it's nice to have that contact with you, even if it's by Zoom. I appreciate seeing everyone. And when Christopher, Carla, and I and Cécile were talking about this presentation a couple of weeks ago, we were in a different situation in our world, and with this recent events, we really had this debate about do we switch the topic for this week. And what we decided to do instead, because there's really an overlap between what we're going to talk about today and the events happening in the world right now, and specifically in this country, and what we're going to present next week as well. I think you may have been notified already of a presentation next week that's a follow-up to what we're doing now, but go deeper into really talking about the racial injustice and supporting your child and how we support the EB community. So I just wanted to explain that's how we decided to break out the presentations. So for today, what I'm going to do is the agenda is Christopher's going to take us through just a brief guided meditation or mindfulness activity. Then we have 3 slides of a presentation that we'll share. We did get some questions in advance, and I believe we should be able to answer most of those within the presentation, but continue to ask your questions. And then in the end, of course, we'll have a question and answer time as well. Okay, great, thank you. So I turn it over to Christopher.
Thank you, Douglas. Hello, everybody. I'm so happy you're all here. We hope that we can impart some good advice for you today. I thought we could start with actually a moment of silence and reflection. And as you can see here, we have Breonna Taylor Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd. And I know a lot of people have passed as of late because of COVID-19. So really, this is a moment of reflection and silence for not only those who have been a victim of racial violence and killing, but also of those that have lost their lives from COVID-19. So just to humanize these beautiful people that you see in front of you, I thought I'd just mention a few things about them. Ahmaud Arbery was 25. He was from Brunswick, Georgia, and he was known as a humble, kind, and well-mannered person. Breonna Taylor was 26 from Louisville, Kentucky, and she was full of life and loved social gatherings with her friends and especially with her family. And George Floyd was 46 and was living in Minneapolis at the time of his passing, and he was known as a gentle giant, and his nickname was Big Floyd, and he was also a very talented athlete. Okay, so let's just have a moment of silence for 1 minute. Okay, thank you. And Douglas?
Okay, great. Thank you, Christopher. So with this first slide, I just want to just cover again, this is a little bit of a review from the presentation we gave a couple weeks ago. I added a few things. One, to also kind of touch on what teachers are feeling and what parents are feeling. And I'll let you look through this as I talk. But also that, what I've seen as this situation has escalated with the killing of George Floyd. What I'm hearing more when I talk with kids, when I talk with parents and teachers, is some more of these feelings of anger, frustration, annoyance, even outrage. And so there's another dimension that has been added on, and just in terms of our situation, going from the pandemic to this social injustice and the demonstrations going on, some of the changes just immediate with our in terms of our shelter in place is starting to get lightened as our curfews are being imposed. So it's kind of compounded those kind of feelings of uncertainty that are coming up. And again, what I see more is some of these other feelings of really anger and outrage coming out as well. I mean, I'm kind of focused on the uncomfortable feelings. I mean, there's also some of the positives that goes with that where people are trying to be unified, they're motivated, they have certain senses of purpose, but I kind of focus on some of the emotions that could be problematic for people. And then with the teachers, and one thing I just want to bring to attention is this is a study that was done out of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, and just measuring, the article is quite broad, and it was going from historical feelings of teachers, but the more recent ones, the reason I bring this up is, what some of the teachers are feeling, but I also think that corresponds a lot with where you as parents are right now, because you are taking on the task of co-teaching with the teacher, teaching, adapting to the technologies that your child is using, or adapting to even maybe new technologies in terms of your work. So these feelings of anxiety, fear, worry, overwhelm, sad, those are going back and forth between the parents and the teachers. I think you see some overlap. And the thing that I just want to say is that when you're looking at, I mean, a lot of these feelings, again, when we're talking about, those are natural reactions to the situation that we're in right now. That's what you would expect. What you really want to be aware of and assess with yourself and with your child is the intensity of those feelings and the duration. You know, when you have a child, like one has mentioned, it was one of our students was interviewed on a program. He talked about his emotions going up and down a lot. When you're having the ups, you know, you're having the downs, when they're able to pull themselves out, they're having the good times to break away from that. That's a positive. It's when your child starts to stay down, or yourself, you're staying down too long or being too anxious and you can't pull yourself out of it. So when you really want to seek help, you know, again, you can always consult, you know, Carla and me as a counselor to help as we can. And let me see, the other thing is in terms of the parents that, you know, kids, you know, are very perceptive, but they don't always know what to do with what they perceive. So it's okay to express to your child, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling uncertain right now. It's, again, maybe the intensity in which you express it, you don't want your child to feel like they have to take care of you or hold your feelings for you, but it's okay to let them know that you're struggling with those things too, because they're going to pick up on the energy. If you say everything's okay and they see that you're tense, then that's a contradiction. So it's okay, again, to express that with your children. I think that's all for this slide. Maybe you could go on the next one, slide, Carla, please. So when we talk about dealing with uncertainty, when we talk about dealing with the stress and anxiety, really what we really want to instill in ourselves and in our kids is resilience, that ability to overcome obstacles, to overcome adversity, to find that to develop that mental strength. And research has really shown that resilience can be taught and it can be learned. And so I break this down in a couple of categories. But I first want to just focus on quotes from two people who really had to deal with adversity, who had, you know, really what I would say are models, at least from in my life, of people demonstrating resilience. The one by Viktor Frankl, when he said, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. And Viktor Frankl is a psychiatrist who came up with the theory of logotherapy, and he spent years in concentration camp during World War II and survived his time in Auschwitz, was the last camp where he was released from at the end of the war. And he was saying that what one of the things that helped psychologically save him was finding purpose, finding meaning, and being able to choose his attitude. He said, you know, that everything could be taken from him except for his ability to choose. And that's what kept him through, and how he developed a theory from that. And then with Nelson Mandela, he said, do not judge me by my successes, judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up again. And again, that's what we're looking at when resilience is teaching us, is we're going to get faced with things that, you know, we're going to teach them to get back up. Or I kind of look at resilience as your role, like when we talk, I'll go over here to where we're talking about what the role as a parent, again, these overlap with I kind of broke it down between what the child can do and the parent, is kind of like giving your child protective gear. It's like when you send them out on their bike or their skateboard, you're going to give them a helmet, you're going to give them elbow pads, knee pads, and helping your child develop resilience is like giving that, because you can't control what all the things that your child's going to have in terms, I mean, we can buffer certain things, but we can't control what they might get exposed to on the internet or what they might walk into on the street. So that's why you want to help develop that. And again, I want to say is, and this is a review from a couple weeks ago, is really limit the exposure to the events, especially, I mean, for the younger kids when you can. In some circumstances, you can't, like with the riots or the demonstrations, I should say, that are going on right now, depending on where you live and so forth, you might not be able to buffer your child from everything. But the younger ones definitely try to do that. With the older ones, have talks with them, because the older kids are already accessing this information through their smartphones, through or their computers. So talk with them about what they're seeing. And the other thing I want to I don't have to go through every single one, but I want to focus on the calm, connected, supportive, and attuned parent. I mean, that just study after study after study shows that helps the child develop resilience. And be aware, though, that you don't have to be perfect. You know, we're going to have, especially when you yourselves might be feeling, you know, anger, frustration, or stress, you're going to lose your temper. I mean, when I talk with families, and even knowing my own family, we're on top of each other all day long, you're going to lose your temper sometime. You're going to have disagreements. The important thing though, in helping that brain develop is going back and repairing that rupture. That's what, when things have calmed down, go back and talk with your child, explain the situation, give that soothing, that care to your child, because then what you're doing is you're helping the brain make that connection. You're integrating that experience into a positive way, even though initially it might have been a negative experience. And again, too, just finding that sense of purpose. And that could be helping with chores, cooking around the house. I had a student that I met with yesterday who was just so upset by what has happened with she wanted to demonstrate for the George Floyd and some of the racial injustice marches, and her parents wouldn't let her. So for all of her classes, she painted her face yesterday. She painted her face with Black Lives Matter on one cheek, and then she put the gay pride flag on the other cheek as a way to kind of give her, express herself and have a sense of purpose. Let me see if there's anything else I want to say is just again to keep in mind that some kids are innately resilient, and others you need to walk them through it. So this other one is just your child's task, help them develop that sense of self-efficacy, to give them a sense of control. With the number 2, we're talking about the adaptive and self-regulatory skills. Again, I mentioned this before, is the executive functioning in the child is developmentally, depending on where they are, you may need to intervene more. And sometimes you have to be that. You might be that person that pulls your child off the computer and makes them go outside and then let them take care of things after that. But there's times when you have to step in. And then again, the last one is just having some type of larger purpose. Like, we have the individual resilience, you have the family resilience, and you have an organizational resilience. And like EB, at least for myself and for many of my colleagues and families I talk to, that's our source of purpose, and it gives us some type of connection to the broader society. So yeah, so that covers that. Just to kind of give you some background, so I could maybe switch to the next slide, Carla.
All right.
And I'll let you go here, Carla.
Okay. So I think a big question that many parents have is, what am I going to do this summer with my children? A lot of people's either travel plans or things that they would traditionally do this summer have been changed and ruptured because of the COVID situation. So we want to be able to just provide a couple of practical tips of what you can do this summer. One thing that's really important, and especially as kids have been a little bit, have been staying at home, have been kind of cut off from a lot of their social relationships, is as now the shelter in place is being a little bit more relaxed, obviously with the due precautions and everything, but start creating a social bubble. So beginning to socialize with a select group of friends and family, being able to organize play dates and open spaces so that the children can be able to start having that connection again over the summer before school starts too. For a lot of kids and families, it is a time of transition. It's a time where they might be changing school, they might be changing to a different division of school, they might even be moving to a different city or country. So definitely allowing moments of closure, being able to connect to friends that were important for them, being able to say, have some kind of ritual goodbye that they can be able to participate in. It is important for them to have that moment of closure of a time that was important. And one thing that can help is to be able to create a memory book or a time capsule. I know when we share the presentation, you'll be able to access the links. So I've added some examples that you can be able to use with both elementary age students and older students, where they can have some memories of this time, which a lot of them have done a lot of growing too. One thing that's important is to maintain a routine. And I mean, usually we think about summer as the absence of routine, right? To be able to relax and take that. But we notice that often, especially with younger children, that the lack of routine often leads to, more misbehaving or, acting out. So giving them some kind of routine, whether it's still a bedtime, it could be different than what it was before, but kind of still having a bedtime, having a wake up time, having activities which they can be able to be active in. that's still very, very important. Limiting screen time when possible, especially for the younger children. Getting them outside and doing other activities is important to keep them activated. But keeping in mind that for some older students, their screens has been a form of socialization during this time of the pandemic. So maybe it might have to be a little bit more lax with them and understanding that they might be using their screens as a form of communication with their friends. And we don't want to cut that off. There are still some camps that have adapted and are doing still some camps, and others have transferred over to virtual day camps. So being able to do that, or to recreate a camp experience at home. There's a lot of websites that can be able to give you examples of activities that you can do, or virtually visit museums and national parks. Christopher, I think you had some ideas too that you'd like to share.
Yeah, and so I had a couple ideas, little tips that will help you and your kids. So of course, having studied mindfulness, I've found that this is great for temperament, just to be in touch with yourself and your emotions. It's not always easy. We don't always make the time to do that. But mindfulness is basically just being present in the moment. So you can practice it all the time. It's just having no distractions and really thinking about where you are at that very moment and how you're feeling. So you can always look it up and study it, but it's just really about being present in the moment. And when your children see you practicing mindfulness, just kind of being calm and centered and being true to your emotions, when kids see that, then they, of course, will emulate that. So that's if you're on your phone all the time and you're not really present, you're not really practicing mindfulness, they're going to see that you're distracted all the time and they're going to do the same thing. So that's always a good thing to do, practice mindfulness, and also check in with yourself and your children regularly. We're going through a lot right now in terms of these complex emotions. And so give yourself a break, give yourself time to emote, to really sit through your emotions and process them, and allow your kids to do the same. We don't want to solve every problem. It's okay. But we definitely want our kids to feel things and to process things and not stuff emotions. So whenever possible, let them let it out. And lastly, of course, this goes without saying, but I just thought I'd mention it. If you and your kids are exercising regularly, this will reduce anxiety and stress, guaranteed, especially if you do it regularly. 3 times a week or more. It increases cognitive function. It gives you more energy. It helps you sleep better. There's so many benefits to it. So I just can't say enough.
It builds the immune system too. You're getting the exercise.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's it for me. And then perhaps we want to open it up to questions.